Hi, good morning everyone, and welcome to my backyard. Something we do live every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. This is that's Central Standard Time. So if you're getting used to kind of checking in on these lives and trying to keep a lookout for them, just know that they're going to be ready for you coming live 10:30 a.m. Central Standard. Yes.
Lisa says hello.
Hello, Lisa McDaniel. Hi, Lisa from Oregon, my friend. I love you. Okay, so here's the deal. We are in South Texas. We live in 9A, 9B. My home is in 9B and our farm is in 9A. That being said, Monday night, yes, believe it or freaking not, Monday night we are expecting frost and freeze.
It was 100 degrees 2 weeks ago.
I know, exactly.
What are you doing?
Welcome to Texas. It doesn't really matter if it was 90 degrees if the next day a cold front decides to blow in. Okay, so that being said, today we have to talk about frost and freeze protection and what we're going to do about that, especially because we rely on these springtime type feelings, these springtime type temperatures to really get some good, an extra season or an extra start of some of those springtime vegetables, tomatoes, squash, green beans, all things, eggplant, all things that are actually in production right now or in harvest right now. Okay, so what are we doing about these things? What am I going to be doing? We are literally rushing out to the farm this afternoon to lay the mulch down around that whole big, giant, nice new garden bed that I've built out there. Something we knew was coming, something we've already done here, but something we knew was coming. One of the things to note about preparing for frost and freeze is that the mulch will help to create a warmer climate around your garden, and so make sure you mulch all around your garden heavily. Also, any of your perennials, so if you've got some pretty big Turk's caps or even some, well, we're cutting those back, so we'll talk about that in just a minute. But any of your perennials, you want to make sure that you've got them mulched heavily. Your trees, your fruit trees, absolutely, especially those young ones, especially if you just put them in. Heavy mulch. Now make sure, I'm going to set my coffee down. Make sure that you're leaving space around the trunk of the tree so that the mulch isn't all the way up around the trunk of the tree, but you've given there a little bit of space around the trunk of your tree. So those are some things that you need to make sure. Some other things that you'll need to be aware of. Now, generally speaking, when we get that cold front that comes in with the shift in weather, we're going to see a lot of moisture. We did yesterday. We saw a massive amount of rain on both places, here at the house and at the farm. And so because of that, that will actually help to protect from some of that frost freeze situation, because when the ground is wet, I don't think he's eating. Oh, hey, you don't eat plants. Come here. Ugh. It's like having a baby. When did I decide to do that? Okay, so moisture, talking about moisture in the soil. So if the ground is wet, that's the reason why a lot of times if you get a snow, although we don't get really snows down here, we actually have, oddly, in the last decade, we've gotten 2 of them. However, we don't usually see the massive hard freeze problems when there's snow, and that's because there's precipitation with snow. Same thing, if we get a nice rain right before a very cold night, then that also will raise the temperatures around things. It kind of creates that kind of steamy environment, which will make it easier to keep your plants' roots. Now, that's the thing when we start talking about, first of all, when we're talking about the area, the microclimate and the mulch and all of that, we actually change the temperature in this particular area. Because just because my neighbor's yard might actually hit 31 or 32 degrees for an hour or 2 overnight, my backyard might not even hit that, even though it's literally next door. And the reason is because I've created a microclimate, because I've put mulch in, because I keep things wet and moist back here, because I've got lots of different types of plant growth. So those are some of the things that I've talked about over the last year as we've been preparing for different types of weather that we're dealing with down here in Texas. So the microclimate will help to keep the entire temperature a degree difference potentially. But in addition to that, the warmth around the roots of plants is extremely important, especially when you're talking about your perennials, especially when you're talking about your eggplants, your trees, your tomato plants, any of that type of stuff. You want to make sure that you keep that area nice and heavily mulched to protect its roots. That's the important part of that. Now, as it relates to wind and wind snap and cold frost and all of those types of things, your leaves may look real ugly come Tuesday morning. Your green beans leaves may be pretty much kicked, may be done. Your squash will likely be done. It does not like that freezing frost cold at all. Your tomatoes, I'll give you some advice on how to protect those. But here's some things you're gonna need to do, absolutely. And I know it's a little bit heartbreaking. You're going to need, you're not supposed to chew on my fingers. You're supposed to chew on toys. He needs a toy. Where's his toy? I'm just kidding. Okay, he's like chewing my shirt, chewing everything. Okay, so you want to make sure that you go and harvest that stuff. Now, green beans, that's no big deal. Go through, get all the big green beans off the vines. Make sure you get all of those out. If you want to just give it a try, leave the baby ones on and see what happens. We might get lucky and it doesn't get that cold that night. The green tomatoes are the one that's a little bit heartbreaking, right? Because you've got all of these beautiful green fat tomatoes, and now we are potentially going to get a frost or a freeze. And if we get a frost or a freeze, even if it's for 30 minutes or 1 hour, you will lose those tomatoes, meaning that they will freeze and they will not be any good to eat anymore. So that's something you kind of have to do. Now, if you're in the zone 9 area, which is closest to the water, closest to the bay, you might get lucky, especially if you've already done a lot of mulching and watering and all of those types of things. Drop a cloth, some kind of a sheet or something like that over the top of your tomato plants. Not only will that protect the vines, but it will also potentially keep it a little bit warmer in there, and you might be able to leave those green tomatoes on there. But that's one of those things that you kind of have to gamble with and decide, hey, you know, it's kind of like the right before the hurricane, when we had the hurricane, and then when I ran out and got all those watermelons, and I ended up being happy with their ripeness, but they could have maybe grown a little bigger and gotten a little more ripe on the vine, but I was concerned about them getting waterlogged with a hurricane flood type of situation. So it's the same thing. You kind of just have to, with the weather situation like this, you kind of just have to, you know, suck it up and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and harvest all this. All of those squash, you know, the cushaw that you're waiting for it to get bigger, don't wait for it to get bigger. Go ahead and pull it because the vine's going to die, and you don't want the fruit to freeze. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. Those pumpkins, I have a pumpkin that's green still that's on the vine, and that's the challenge with planting winter squash as late as I planted winter squash, knowing that it's likely in November we could get, even if it's just an overnight situation, an overnight frost or an overnight freeze. And that's really what we're dealing with in terms of making sure that you protect your things. So eggplants is another example. And of course I've got lots of eggplants on, and some of these are going to just need to come off, even though they're small, but that's okay because we'll turn them into all kinds of interesting little things, little vegetables and things that we can use in our cooking inside and stuff like that. So really that's the thing. Today, before Monday night, spend your gardening time getting mulch put down and making sure that you're harvesting all of your fruits off the vine. Now, a trick for those green tomatoes: if you see any bit of yellow, orange, anything like that on the tomato, then it's got just enough of that chemical that works to help it ripen, that if you put it in a brown bag with another tomato that has already begun to really ripen, then you will be able to get all of those green tomatoes to ripen. As a matter of fact, I buy green tomatoes from the farmer's market that I will notice even a tiny bit of yellow on those, and I will go ahead and throw them into my brown bag. It's basically the exact same thing that is done when they ship tomatoes to the grocery store. I mean, that's really what they do to them. They pick them green, and then they ripen them Now, I want them to be vine ripened as much as I possibly can, so I'm trying as hard as I can to leave them on with a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange, something in there, and then they get their own natural, I'm missing that word today. It's not wanting to come to my brain. The ripening, the word ripening, that's the word I'm looking for. The ripening of those tomatoes, you want to make sure that they just get a little bit of that vine ripen on them so that you can get them inside. The temperatures aren't going to be super warm for a few days, but as soon as they get back up to that warmth again, your tomato plants will start setting flowers again, they'll start setting fruit again, and we'll just kind of keep moving through the winter. But do be sure to make sure that you mulch. Do be sure to make sure that you water. If you've got tomato plants in pots, like I talked last week about some of the tomato plants I have that are in large pots, I'm going to go ahead and move any of those that I can up closer to the house or in the house even for the night. If I've got a pot that's actually rooted into the ground, don't try to pull it out of the ground, because if you try to pull it out of the ground, you're going to break the tap roots and you're going to break the most important roots for that tomato plant, and you're going to kill it regardless. So treat it like it's in the ground, cover it with a sheet or something like that. Keep an eye on your weather. I mean, just keep an eye on it, because here I am on Sunday talking to you about the fact that I'm seeing Monday night 31, 32, right? 33, 34, like kind of in that range, just for maybe an hour or two overnight. But by tomorrow, by Monday, that could have already shifted to Tuesday. So keep an eye on the weather so that you know whether or not you need to pick those tomatoes or not. And then, but do go ahead, if you've got the time today and tomorrow, mulch, because it was time to do that anyways. It was absolutely time to make sure you put your mulch down so you don't have to worry about that part of it anymore. Now, if we go a couple days before we do see that actual freeze, like maybe it's not Monday, maybe it's Tuesday or Wednesday, go back and water again if we haven't gotten some moisture, because you want to make sure that the ground is nice and wet whenever that freeze sets in. So yeah, did you have someone had a question?
I had a question. How do you watch the weather?
I use the Weather Channel.
Okay.
And I use the Weather Channel app on my phone, and I actually watch the radar too. Like I'm real particular about watching the radar, but I also know how the coastline works and how it pushes things around and moves things around. And so even though I am looking at those temperatures, I'm also watching the radar so that I understand what's happening with the movement of clouds and things like that. And so I have a better idea of what to expect. Sometimes I can even look at the radar and everyone's forecasting that this is what's going to happen, and I can look at it and go, that's not what's going to happen, because I can just tell, I can see the way the wind is moving and things like that, and we haven't had the shift that they've been looking for. But what ends up happening is it still comes, it just comes a little bit later. So that's the thing, that's just kind of keep an eye on it and keep watching for it. And then the other thing that we need to be excited about rather than gloomy about is the fact that all of our winter stuff, which I literally talked about this last week, where I was like, I don't know if it's ever going to get cold enough to actually have winter vegetables here. Well, our winter vegetables are going to be so much happier with these cooler temperatures. That kale is going to be delicious. These cabbages are going to start reaching up real tall to get all big and stretched out. Those sugar snap peas and the snow peas, oh man, they're going to love these cooler temperatures. The celery is going to love these cooler temperatures. So that's something that we can look forward to. And the other thing we can look forward to is a lot of times with even just a frost or a snap of cold, we kill a buttload of pests. And that is what I am absolutely looking forward to, is the idea.
I think you've said on some of these videos in the last couple of months that last year we really didn't even get that cold snap to eradicate some of the pests naturally. I
think there was some cold snap. It was pretty minimal, but this is early. A November cold snap, a November frost. I don't think we got a November frost last year. I don't think we got a frost until about January, and might have only been out in the 9A areas and not in the 9B areas. Because I don't think I even put my tomatoes away last year. I didn't pick tomatoes. I didn't do any of that because it just didn't, I never saw anything that concerned me. So that's really what we're doing. And, don't be afraid to gamble. I will tell you that all the time. Do not be afraid to test the weather. That's what we're doing here. That's the great part about living in South Texas. And that's the great part about knowing that September is when we plant, because this is our garden season, and it's only going to get better from here on out as we move through January, as we move into February, March, April, May. It's going to be a beautiful year. I am really, really excited about all of the great stuff coming out. I do definitely want to talk to you guys about a few things that are happening. Number one, if you haven't yet joined, I have 2 Facebook groups that I have started just recently. One of them is called It's Just Aislynn. That's kind of the name of, it's kind of what I've coined my way of gardening. It's a little bit of techniques of permaculture. It's a little bit of techniques of foodscaping. It's a little bit of techniques of, well, it's definitely techniques of organic gardening, but my way of organic gardening. And it's all these different techniques of how to do things in your backyard, food foresting. It's how to do things market gardening on the farm. It's all of that. It's just Aislynn's way, right? So there's a Facebook group on there. If you're interested in that, just drop a yes down here and I will add you to that group, or I'll send you the link to that group. The second group is actually my seasonal food marketplace. It's called Aislynn's Overflow of Abundance. And what I do is every day that I have some availability of overflow of things that are coming out of my gardens that I want, that we're not getting to eat fast enough or preserve fast enough, I'm then pushing those out for people to purchase. And I'll drop a link in there with a form. You fill out the form, you order it, it gives you options of how to pay, it gives you options on how to get the distribution you need, whether it's a pickup or a delivery or whatever you need for you. So that's something that's available as well. Other things that are coming.
The yeses are pouring in.
The yeses are pouring in. Woo, 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 woo. That's what I want to hear. Yeah. Okay, so other things that are coming, I'm super excited about January 2021 because that's when I begin launching the official workshop course for 2021. I've got a 6-week mastermind called Intuitive Gardening coming up. I'm going to be doing a free master class, an hour-long, me talking to you very specifically about what intuitive gardening is, talking about what permaculture gardening is, what edible landscaping is, what foodscaping is, all of these different things that you've heard about, and what is Aislynn's version of intuitive gardening. Intuitive gardening to me is no rules gardening. It's literally close my eyes and feel in the dirt and I know what's happening in that ground and I can make things happen. And it's easy for me and it's fun for me and it gives me back more than it takes from me. So that'll be coming up on January 2nd. Tell me yes in the comments that you want to get more information about the Intuitive Gardening Mastermind, 6-week mastermind that starts on January 2nd with a free master class. All right? So that's where we go with that. So many more things coming up. I've got a monthly membership for garden education. I've got a monthly membership for some seed to plate, literal learning about what you're growing and then taking that stuff and turning it into food together as we create a demo out at the farm. I'm really looking forward to all of the new things that are coming with that. There's opportunities for private coaching. There's opportunities for edible landscape consulting. I've got all kinds of things coming out. I'm super looking forward to 2021 and all that's going to be coming with that and all of our beautiful gardens. And of course, we launch episode 13, Dinner Table Talks, tomorrow morning. And just like every other week, it's just Aislynn and Joe Hilliard at the dinner table.
Can I tease it?
Tease it.
Our weekly table topics question is, have you ever gotten into a physical fight?
Ah, yes, physical fights.
And you tell us
that I'm a little bit
some
scrappy.
eye-opening stories that people aren't going to want to miss.
If you hadn't figured it out already, as peace-loving and happy girl as I am, I'm a little bit scrappy. So I hope you guys will tune in and listen in. It's fun. And I love you all. And I wish you the best Sunday and the most wonderful week. And it's Sagittarius season. Friday's my birthday. Whoop.